to the penultimate paper of this session, Role of Dhyana in Indian Sculpture and Poetry by Srimati Lakshmi Subramaniam. Lakshmi ji.
Okay. Namaskarams to everyone at Indic Academy, all the scholars and all the viewers present. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My gratitude to Dr. Jayaraman sir, Dr. Nagaraj Paturi sir and Hari Kiran sir for giving an upcoming scholar like me to present my study. My humble pranams to my guru, my mother, Mrs. Rajeshwari, and my grandmother, Mrs. Parvati Ammal, who has shown us the path of Atma Vidya, and also to be steadfast in the path despite the circumstances. My Odissi gurus, Guru Deepak Roy, Bharatanatyam Guru, Mrs. Vasanta, who has broadened my perspective to look beyond dance into sculpture, painting, and my mentors, Dr. Anusha, of Sanskrit professor of Ethiraj College. And also my respects and obeisance to Pujya Shri Shankaracharyas of the Kanchi Mat and the Sringeri Mat, who have molded me to who I am today and is a guiding light in my spiritual path. My presentation today is Dhyana in the context of Indian sculpture and Indian poetry. I shall begin with an invocation to Lord Ganesha. So I'm just switching on my Shruti box just for a couple of minutes. Gajananam bhutaganadisevitam kapittajambu falasarabhakshitam umasutam शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजम्. So I'd like to just start off by giving a highlight as to how I started my inquiry with regard to this paper. So basically, in Indian arts, it is important to see how different arts are linked to one another, and how looking at different art forms in this paper with regard to poetry and sculpture, with the intent to help to draw out different methodologies in understanding the creative process. So that was my intention. A brief intro about myself is I started off as a Bharatanatyam dancer, and then I delved into Odissi classical dance much into my college years. My first guru, Guru Deepak Roy, who was a sculptor and a dancer from the Shantiniketan Vishwabharati University. So as I went deeper into studying Odissi choreographies specifically with regard to Mahaguru Guru Kelchan Mohapatra's compositions, I pondered at how did he actually, how his thought process, how was his choreographic process in dance, how did it evolve? So he, in his works, he has incorporated the metaphors in Indian poetry, the finis with which he has reflected upon the Pattachitra paintings as he came from a family of Pattachitra painters, and the sculpturous poses of the temples of Odisha, thereby giving us what we have as the modern Odissi classical dance that we practice today. That's a snap of Mahaguru Kelchan Mohapatra in performing the Ashtapati Kuru Yadunandana, and this is just a Pattachitra art form. So my key questions as I began with dance was, is the process of choreography brought about just by spontaneity, or was there a more methodical approach with which they worked on for years that was probably borrowed or inspired by other art forms to give us masterpieces like we see on stage, be it an ensemble production or one-off pieces like even the Pallavi pieces that is performed as part of Odissi repertoire. As I said, Indian classical art forms are very much linked between one another. This conversation that is taken from the Vishnu Dharmottarama Purana which is a text that covers basically visual arts, is a conversation between the king and the sage. So the conversation goes as follows, wherein the king asks the sage to teach him the methods of image making or sculpture, to which the sage responds that to that you must know the laws of painting. And the king responds saying, okay, then teach me the laws of painting. Then he says that you must know the laws of dancing then do so, teach me the laws of dancing. And to know dancing, he says you must know instrumental music, and to know instrumental, you must know vocal music. Vocal music in turn is connected to poetry and the laws of grammar. So this is taken from the book Hindu View of Art by Malkraj Anand. So any discussion on the interrelationship of Indian arts at the level of theoretical or practical is meaningful only if we realize that all the Indian arts are as if the myriad petals of a single flower. Each petal is clearly definable, has autonomy in shape and form, but has life and vitality only as part of a whole. This is taken from Kapila Bhattacharya's speech at IGNCA regarding the interrelationship of arts. So having said that, drawing on the similarities in the process of creation in different art forms, with regard to that, we will be seeing dhyana in the context of Indian poetry and sculpture, so that we may be able to see it as a template in propelling our own creativity and also in designing modern meditative techniques. Your creativity is the language of your true self. Don't resist it. Let it use you wholly. This is taken from healthroughwords.com. I just want to add a small note on modern meditative practices. Of the modern meditative practices, we have seen guided meditation. We had a session yesterday and today also. And there's something called as contemplative art practices, which use a mix of both ancient and modern techniques to propel creativity. So guided meditation, for instance, guided meditation relies on the process of scripting, focus on breath control and visualization to achieve desired outcomes of better sleep, relief from post-traumatic stress disorder, and improved creativity. Contemplative art practices. Now, in this slide of mine, I've just given an example of what exactly is contemplative art practices involve. So, when you basically are at a museum and you look at a painting, you just don't walk by it, but rather you ask questions as to what did you first notice about the painting? What else did you notice as you keep looking at it? What colors are used? What thoughts went in through your mind while looking at the image? Or what feelings or memories did it actually bring about? So that's an example of contemplative art practices. So to be an artist or just to enjoy an art form, you don't need to be really a genius or a connoisseur. You just need to be mindfully present to the moment, be it a moment that you're performing while dancing or just feeling the note on the piano foot. Getting immersed is what is key in contemplative art practices. Now coming to the main topic, that is dhyana in the context of poetry. So basically looking at the Valmiki Ramayana, which is the very first work of poetry that we have, how did sage Valmiki give us this masterpiece? Did he compose it spontaneously? What was the process that was involved in giving us this work of art is what we'll be exploring. So I have divided dhyana in the context of poetry as 3 divisions. One is intention of the artist. In this case, it is Valmiki. Am I audible? I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So one is intention of the poet, that is here Rishi Valmiki, the darshana that he obtains, darshana that he obtains, and contemplation on that darshana that leads to the creation of the work that lends us the masterpiece. So first is the intention of the poet. So Saint Narada visits the hermitage of Valmiki, and the following account is taken from the chapter 1 of Balakanda, Valmiki Ramayana. It goes as follows: Tapasvadhyaya niratam tapasvi vagvidamvaram Naradam Paripapracha Valmikirmunipungavam. So Valmiki inquires Narada, the preeminent among sages, engaged in the practice of religious austerities and eloquent in the Vedas. Now, what does he inquire him? Kundvasvim sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan dharmajnasya kritajnasya satyavakyo dridavritah charitrena chako yukta sarvabhuteshu kohitah vidvan kakasamartascha kascheka priyadarshanaha atmavan ko jita krodho dyutiman ko nasuyakah kasya bipyati devascha jataroshasya samyuge. So he asks, tell me about a human being endowed with such qualities, endowed with Divya Gunangal like prowess, righteousness, gratitude, truthfulness, firmness, good conduct and compassionate, so on and so forth. Tell me about such a person. With this he says, Etat ichchamyaham shrotum param kautuhalam hime Maharshi tvam samartosi Nyatumevam vidambaram. He says, O Maharshi, I intend, etat ichchamyaham shrotum, I intend to hear about such a man whom you are able to place. Indeed, great is my curiosity. So, the Valmiki Ramayana, the first part is the intention of the poet, with which we have the first part, following which Saint Narada gives us an account of the story of Rama as Samksheba Ramayana, which is chapter 1 of Balakanda. So, upon sage Valmiki's inquiry whether there is a perfect human being living on earth, sage Narada narrates the story of Lord Rama, who is Vishnu's incarnate, and urges Valmiki to write the story of Rama's life. So, Valmiki's inspiration doesn't stop once he hears the story of Rama from Saint Narada. It's not that he hears the story and just goes on to composing his work of poetry. No. It is his darshana. So basically in this case, I just want to add one note. There is something called as raga darshana that is there in music. Now if you ask any of the esteemed musicians, have you had a particular raga darshana of this particular raga? Yeah, very well. The Ragamala paintings give a pictorial representation to ragas. But if you ask anybody, did you see the Raga Devata? Did you see the Ragini Devi as you were, probably meditatively singing or while you are doing Sangeeta Upasana? It's not a very straightforward question that one can answer. But there is a novel that was written by Indira Soundarajan called the Rudraveena, wherein there is the protagonist of the story is basically a musician having the Rudraveena, and he goes about from different village to village, and he comes across situations and circumstances which propel him to play a particular raga so as to solve a particular problem. So this can be Draught, where he plays Amritavarshini, or Rag Megh in Hindustani, or in order to bring unity about in a village, unity in a married couple, situations like these. So the darshana or there are circumstances or difficult circumstances which propel an artist to find a solution for that particular situation, which brings about a beautiful work of art. So in that line, in this case, the darshana of the male crownjaw bird being shot down by the hunter overwhelms Valmiki with grief, and he expresses the reflection of the sorrow of the female companion by bursting out in sloka in metrical form. And that Viraha Tapam is what brings out the birth of the very first sloka of the Ramayana. Ma nishadam pratishtatvam magamashashvati samaha yat kraunchamitunadekam avadikama mohitam. So is that all? And we have the Ramayana? No, that is not all that happens. We have Lord Brahma appears at the hermitage, and this occurs in Sarga 2, and directs him to compose the great poem in the same meter describing the story of Rama as related by Narada. And he grants him, through the power of clairvoyance, to view the events that had happened during the period of Rama, and also the events that are to come forward that we have as the Uttara Ramayana, Uttarakanda, the Uttara Ramayana. रहस्यं च प्रकाशं च यद्वृत्तं तस्य धीमतः रामस्य सह सौमित्रे राक्षसानां च सर्वशः वैदेह्याश्चैव यद्वृत्तं प्रकाशं यदि वारः तच्चाप्यविदितं सर्वं विदितं ते भविष्यति. So the incidents pertaining to Rama together with Lakshmana, Sita, Bharata and the Rakshasas, their deeds, thoughts unknown or known to everybody and even not known to you will be revealed to you by my grace. And meditation then in the context of artistic contemplation. So here what I'd like to say is the poet is but an instrument who by the grace of the divine, after polishing his faculties, is granted the poetic eye or perception, contemplating on the darshana, goes on to compose his work of art. Shrutva vastu samagram tad dharmatma dharma samhitam vyaktamanveshate bhuyo yadvrittam tasya dhimatah. Hearing the entire story of Rama from Narada, the righteous Valmiki sought to know clearly about the history of Rama endowed with wisdom. Upasprishyodakam samyak munistitva kritanjalihi prachinaagreshu dharmeshu dharmena veshate gatim. Having performed Achamana, Valmiki seated on the kushagras with folded palms, seated for the searched for the course of past events in the history of Rama by the power of his penance. राम लक्ष्मण सीताभिराज्ञा दशरथेन च सभार्येण स राष्ट्रेण यत्प्राप्तं तत्र तत्त्वतः हसितं भाषितं चैव गतिर्या यच्च चेष्टितं तत्सर्वं धर्मवीर्येण यथा वत्सं prapashyati. So by the power of his penance, the holy sage Valmiki visualized clearly Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, Dasharatha, his wife's kingdom, all that they had observed, experienced, endeavored during the course of events. He also visualized clearly their laughter and conversation exactly as in real life. Tatha pashyati dharmatma tatsarvam yogamastitah pura yattatra nivrittam pana vamalakam yata. With the power of yoga, the righteous Valmiki saw clearly, like an amla fruit in the palm of the hand, the entire course of events that happened in the past relating to Rama. So with this, I end my section of poetry. I'll go on to dhyana in the context of sculpture.
Lakshmiji, can you summarize?
Yeah. Yes, I can summarize, sir. So basically, in the context is like how, for instance, in talking to a layman, if you're going to ask, like let's say for instance Kalidasa, did he actually see the Kumara Sambhavam happening right before his eyes? How did he actually get to the finer details in the Ramayana? So, or how did this particular poem come into reality? I mean, it's not something. So this, what I'm trying to say here is that any poetic work of art doesn't just occur by a spontaneous flow. Yes, it does at times, but there is some kind of abhyasam, a quest for a certain question that the Kavi or the Rishi goes towards. And in that quest, he gets answers, he gets the darshana, he gets situations that evoke rasa in him, and contemplating on the darshana, he is able to give us beautiful masterpieces. This is how the creative process in the context of poetry does take place. That's my and in order for you to be a medium to get so, you need to polish your vasanas, you need to follow some niyamas to be granted that darshana, to be worthy of that darshana. That is my conclusion. I have a small presentation with regard to sculpture. Shall I go through that? Or yes, I have another 5 minutes. Okay.
It was sent 5 minutes ago.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So what I would like to say is, I'll just go to the my last slides in the case of. So what I'm trying to say is, dhyana in the context of sculpture also follows a similar process. There are steps in the creation of form, that is an intention of the artist, and there is also a deliberate invocation of dreams that the artist must do. And this process is different from our ordinary recalling of images. That is the thing. So I just go to my final conclusion. So hence, to make ourselves a worthy medium, we need to polish our vasanas, break our sheets that limit us, and thereby increasing our perseverance to contemplation in our prospect to give the world beautiful works of art. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi ji, for bringing that beautiful connection between uh, dance and poetry and dhyana.